Ganjing world, a brighter way of life.
Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump holds his 6th cabinet meeting defending the tariff letters he's sending out and what's Secretary Kristi Noem on the Department of Homeland Security saying about the Texas floods and how Attorney General Pam Bondi responds to questions about Jeffrey Epstein. Kerr County officials provide an update on search efforts following the weekend's deadly flash floods. The death toll from the Central Texas tragedy surpasses 100. Nearly $170 million for DHS. Has the big, beautiful bill changed the landscape for immigration enforcement? We discussed with the panel. The U.S. is moving to ban Chinese nationals and citizens from other adversarial nations from buying American farmland. Why officials warn it's a threat to food security. The U.S. is set to send more weapons to Ukraine. What President Trump says about the war and the decision to further aid Kyiv. The EU Commission President today warning of rising economic and security risks from Beijing amid the commemoration of diplomatic ties between the EU and China.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. Search efforts continued today as teams waded through muddy riverbanks in central Texas. The odds of finding survivors are unfortunately plummeting, with dozens still missing from flash floods over the weekend. The Kerr County Sheriff and other Texas officials provided an update. Here's the sheriff speaking earlier.
Hundreds of first responders remain along the Guadalupe River in Kerr County working to reunite families. The large search and rescue effort, including local, state, federal, and volunteer agencies, continue. As of 8 a.m. Central Time, 87 deceased have been recovered in Kerr County, including 56 adults and 30 children. Identification is pending for 19 adults and 7 children, with 1 additional person still unidentified. At present, 5 Camp Mystic campers and 1 counselor still remain unaccounted for. We ask private boats to stay off the Guadalupe River to allow search and rescue teams to operate without any interference. This is a tragic time for us.
We've searched 26 river miles since the tragic event has started. We've had approximately 444 rescues, 30 recoveries. Some of our resources and assets we have dedicated to this tragic event include 2 helicopters with hoist teams, 12 drone teams, 10 canine units, 9 swiftwater boat crews, 15 airboats, 16 UTVs, and 169 four-wheel drive vehicles. Your Texas Game Wardens will remain here and serving the community. We just ask you to continue to pray for the victims, for the families, for your first responders, for everyone involved.
Today's report puts the death toll at over 100, though that number is expected to rise. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said he plans to make another visit to Camp Mystic today. At least 27 campers and counselors were killed at the popular all-girls Christian summer camp. Most deaths occurred in and around the riverfront town of Kerrville and the grounds of Camp Mystic. Both are situated in a swath of the Texas Hill Country known as Flash Flood Alley. Governor Greg Abbott says more than 20 agencies are responding. The death toll is increasing, but so are stories of historic rescues. Here are some of the stories of the many people who helped save lives.
I've lost 2 friends. We loved them. And they're gone.
More than 100 people are dead after catastrophic floods in central Texas. But that number would be higher without heroic rescuers. One is a father who died saving his daughter.
Joel held on to him and prayed over his family and did his very best to hang on as long as he could.
The owner of this devastated RV park recalls banging on doors and helping residents through the water. She says her husband nearly died in the river.
My husband keeps yelling at him, throw your baby at me. And at that point, a big wave came by, and they both got swept away.
Some survivors from camps along the river praise their counselors for thinking quickly.
They moved the boys from their lower bunks to then the upper bunk, and then ultimately hoisted them up into the rafters.
Camp Mystic is where more than 24 children and counselors died. One Coast Guard swimmer says he gave up his spot in a helicopter to fit more children on board.
It's fresh like spring.
Now he's credited with helping save 165 children rescued from the camp.
I've never seen anything this tragic in my life.
Members of the San Antonio community gathered yesterday to help support victims of the Texas floods with a candlelight vigil and donation drive. Yesterday evening, President Trump confirmed he will be visiting Central Texas on Friday. He called it a terrible event after more than 100 people have been confirmed dead so far. Here's Trump.
They have a great governor, they have wonderful senators, they have wonderful representatives, and we're going to work together with them. And we have been working really very hard. This whole table has been working. That was a terrible event, terrible event. You saw that maybe where Texas was just absolutely so badly hurt by something that was a big surprise late in the evening. So we'll be working with the governor and all of the people of Texas.
The Department of Housing and Urban Development has announced a 90-day moratorium on foreclosures in the Kerr County area. HUD Secretary Scott Turner said the pause will apply to single-family home mortgages insured by the Federal Housing Administration. According to HUD, there are more than 900 FHA-insured mortgages in the Kerr County major disaster area. HUD said it was working with mortgage services and others to assess the extent of the damage to properties. The moratorium is effective as of July 6th, the day President Donald Trump declared a disaster in Texas. Trump said he plans to visit the flood zone Friday. The One Big Beautiful Bill recently signed into law delivers an expansion of resources for the Trump administration's efforts to crack down on illegal immigration. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem says the bill is a win for law and order and the safety and security of the American people. Joining us now to discuss is Mike Leon, Director of Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation and host of Can We Please Talk podcast. And also joining us is Tony Kinnett, National Correspondent for the Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. First of all, good afternoon to you both. Tony, I'll start with you today. The bill delivers an expansion of resources to these immigration efforts. So some numbers here for you, nearly $170 million for DHS with $46.5 billion for border wall completion, $14.4 billion for deportation, transportation. How would you characterize this level of investment in terms of, federal immigration enforcement? And has the Big Beautiful Bill changed the landscape for immigration enforcement?
So I think that the second question is easiest to answer. As for changing the landscape on enforcement, I think that the execution of policy is almost far more important than the apportionment of funds to begin with. The executive branch has an incredible amount of leeway to spend monies allotted by Congress towards executive agencies as it sees fit. So I think that this is now going to be on the Trump administration for how these monies are spent. So Norm, you might expect me to take perhaps a victory lap on an expansion of funding. I'm more so interested in seeing the application of those funds carried out well. Now, to answer the first question as to what I think that this is built upon, realistically, this is built on the mandate from the people who across the United States, according to multiple polling sets that we have now months in, very much support not just deportation, but mass deportations. The majority of the country supports such policy. And I think that also it's a national security issue to have the border remain as porous as it is, given the failed state of Mexico, which has been almost completely taken over by the Sinaloa cartel, and the really dangerous situations, not just for Americans, but also those trying to come in legally and claim asylum, who are essentially being shoved aside by individuals related to these cartels. And then, of course, operating here in the country as well. I think that's really the basis for a lot of this, and the Big Beautiful Bill does help fund that.
Okay, Mike, let me get your view on the Big Beautiful Bill in the context of immigration enforcement.
Yeah, well, first off, good to see all of you guys, and thoughts and prayers to everybody out there in Central Texas with all the floods. My thoughts on the one big beautiful bill is like kind of what Tony said about appropriating funds. It's really how funds are used with respect to this. I mean, if you recall, and Don, you and I have talked about this before, during the Biden administration, there was Senator Langford's bill that would have tackled some of these issues with respect to hiring and more agents and helping with more enforcement across the border. That obviously never passed through Congress. So now within this bill, we just have a lot more money that's being allocated towards this. I'm kind of with Tony on I'm with Tony on this specific part, and it's really about the enforcement part of this, because if you recall, the Biden administration really, and towards the end of 2024, the latter 6 months of 2024, really relied on Mexico's part of the enforcement part of this. That is where the stem of all this, where the coyotes live, where everybody's making these passages, and they eventually get to this bottleneck, which is Mexico. And we need to rely on those partnerships with the governors of those areas in Mexico, and with obviously the Mexican president, to be able to do their job to enforce the border. So that way we can properly vet who is coming into this country. So it's not really so much about the funds and hiring more agents. Maybe that's an overkill. Maybe that's an overspend with respect to this bill. Some of things could have been spent on other things, other parts of the United States that are potentially crumbling. But they decided to go in this direction and give this amount of money to this agency. They feel like this is a national security threat right now at this moment. And I really am with Tony. It's really about the policy and the subsequent actions, and really also about the vetting process and how do we eventually get somebody on the path to become a citizen in this country. Immigration has been broken over 40 years over any president. It doesn't matter which president has been in the United States. That's something that needs to be tackled and addressed later on.
Tony, let me get your thoughts on how you feel about Trump's current approach to immigration enforcement compared to what we saw in his first term. Are we seeing a fundamentally different strategy from Trump now? Is this Trump 2.0 on immigration? What do you think?
I think that he's addressing one of the key issues that a lot of Americans have with, for example, certain mayors of large cities who've created these sanctuary cities, which many have argued is a violation of federal law. When you have individuals like Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles, who doesn't even have the time of day to approve certain rebuilding contracts and lift certain regulations for those rebuilding after the wildfires, but does have time to go down to the park and make sure that those who have been accused and, in fact, in many cases, indicted and released, which is a very wild thing to suggest, that have been indicted for crimes, everything from domestic abuse to repeated battery with a foreign object to kinds of sexual assault, that those individuals being arrested for breaking the law in sanctuary cities is a huge target for this administration. And I think that's appropriate. Just in the same way during the civil rights era, we saw individuals which were setting up pseudo sanctuary cities for Jim Crow laws that had to be essentially brought forward and said, you cannot, as an individual in the United States elected to office, flagrantly violate and essentially flip off federal law because you want to make some kind of a political point. It doesn't work that way. In fact, the Civil War was fought in large part to make sure that federal law regarding human rights are in fact enforced. And regarding illegal immigration in this country, with the way the Trump administration is tackling it, I agree with Mike that the immigration system needs to be reformed. I would say the best way initially would be getting rid of that 10-year moratorium. If you are kicked out of the country for immigrating illegally, that you should just be allowed to go to the back of the legal immigration line. But as far as the present enforcement right now, the sanctuary city stuff and the flagrant violation of federal law seems to be the target of this administration.
Mike, do you see a difference this time around? It seems like ever since Trump got into the Oval Office, there has been a spotlight on immigration.
Yeah, well, I mean, he ran on it, Don, right? I mean, there was only two issues that everybody really cared about, the economy and immigration, if you talk to anybody or in any exit poll that you looked at. But the difference has been, and again, this is me more now talking to immigration attorneys across 3 different states, some that have represented some clients. It has been about, there's already laws on the books, right? The Trump administration, Alien Enemies Act, dusting up an old 1798, law and trying to put it out into practical use with respect to warrants of what ICE can do in terms of administrative warrants versus judiciary warrants. Like there's creative legal strategies in how they're doing the enforcement. I think there is some over spotlighting at times of immigration enforcement because it is President Trump. I mean, in 2013, the ACLU wrote a scathing report about President Obama, and 84% of folks that were in immigration courts didn't even have an opportunity to actually see a judge. So, and this is from the ACLU's website. This is not from Mike Leon. Mike Leon doesn't work for the ACLU. So this was back in 2013. And I think we live in a different age now where social media is able to spotlight more stories. People are able to push things out more to the mainstream, and people are able to catch that, post that, reshare it without verifying it. So I do think that there's a little bit of like this overtelling of the story. But I also think President Trump, his own words, has said he wants to deport 15 million people. They want to increase the numbers. If you want to increase the numbers, the only way you're able to do that is by disrupting people that are going through what they used to consider the legal process. That means people that are here illegally but are going to their appointments. And we've seen videos of that, of folks, ICE being confronted with folks that are at their immigration appointments with their attorneys. And then the immigration attorneys have to go out there to the media and kind of articulate what it is or the confusion that they're feeling for their clients. So President Trump has said this. He ran on this, like Tony said, mass deportations, 15 million people he wants to deport. I don't know if we're going to get to that number. Obama only got to about 3.1 million, but this is something that he ran on. This is what the country elected him for. I don't agree with some of the enforcement part of it, but I do agree with that the system is broken and we need to figure out a pathway to citizenship, because immigrants contribute largely to our economy by any number that you look at, from the American Immigration Council all the way on to the CBO. The projections are in the trillions of what immigrants contribute to our economy. We have to figure out a way to make immigration work for this country.
All right, Tony, here's a couple of numbers for you. Illegal border crossings saw a 95% decrease from March 2024, which is the lowest monthly figure in U.S. history. And from January 20th through April 1st, there was a 99.9% decrease in the number of illegal immigrants released into the country compared to the same period last year. Tony, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it also showcases that the Langford bill, which Mike referenced a little bit earlier here, there were two sides to that bill. There was the increase in funding and hiring more agents and funding certain immigration courts to make processes easier regarding deciding who did and didn't qualify. But also there were all of these threads, and when the president could and couldn't close the border, when the Homeland Security Secretary could and could not close the border, certain quotas and influx 7,000 per day before the president could even begin to ask, man, maybe we should consider, closing certain areas of the border. And so those kinds of policies weren't necessary. All you need is the executive to uphold federal law. And one of the most basic parts of Article 2 includes enforcing the borders of this country. Now, that said, I think that when you're looking at the implementation of these particular policies, and you're looking at the kind of the grand scope, the psychological argument we're having now, which is, well, what should we really do about immigrants? And this is where I would push back against Mike a little bit. It's this conflation of the terms illegal immigration and immigration. Yes, immigrants make up a huge part of the economy of the United States. That is very different than saying illegal immigrants make up a huge part of the economy of the United States. Because to participate in the United States economy, I have to have some skin in the game. I have to have a certain number of things that a sovereign citizen is supposed to have, that someone here on a legal visa is supposed to have, not just protections for me, but protections for my employer. And one of the issues we're seeing with a lot of these immigrant or illegal immigrant run economies, especially regarding farms and food processing plants, is that people are being paid essentially slave wages, which is disgusting. And you can say, well, that would make food prices go up. I'm not going to get over the fact that there are individuals who are, you can talk about undercutting Americans in the economy, being paid $2 an hour to pick tomatoes or to pick strawberries. That's inhumane. That should not be appropriate just because we think that is. And that's one of the reasons why I'm for reforming the immigration system itself, so that we create an opportunity for individuals to come in here legally and then actually be paid appropriate wages. I think that's something that a lot of Americans would support.
Okay, Mike, let me get your response to what Tony is saying in the context of that the Trump administration apparently is working on a plan to create a temporary pass or permit for illegal immigrants employed in agriculture and other certain sectors as well. I mean, is Trump sort of acknowledging that his policies might have an impact on the U.S. economy?
Yeah. Don, you answered the question. I don't even know if I need to take a turn here because, look, back to Tony's point, and Tony, I'm glad you landed the plane on. I was going to hammer you, Tony. I'm just kidding. You landed the plane on what is actually at the core of this. Like, look at the construction industry down here in Florida, right? Almost 11% of the workforce here is foreign born versus I think it's about 6.5 or 6.7% is U.S. born. That's immigrant labor. Those are but the wages that they're
legal
making
or illegal immigrant labor, because it's a question.
Exactly. No, and I agree with you, and that's what I'm saying. Like, we're not paying these folks legal wages, but also, are they legal or are they illegal? And I think back to your question, Don, of like, is the president realizing this? I hope that this does provide some relief in the agriculture space and the construction space, because there are a lot of industries that rely on folks that are coming here. Let's be honest, they've come here illegally, and then when they're here in the previous administration, they were allowed to do certain things with respect to seeing an immigration attorney, going to court hearings and stuff like that. The Trump administration has just changed that policy to say, you've already violated the law. You're here illegally. You cannot come back in here. That's the difference. I think people are missing that one key difference here. The previous administration was like, see an immigration attorney, let's figure this out in court. It's a civil offense, et cetera, et cetera. This administration has said, no, you violated the law of this country. It's a law thing. Like, it's not even an R&D thing. This is a law thing. This is what they've decided to do. I think the president has gotten heat from folks in those sectors in the agriculture and construction. I happen to know a few in the construction industry that are in New York, New Jersey, that happen to have the ear of the president from yesteryears. They have said the same thing, that they're like, you're going to kill my workforce. But back to Tony's point, right? Legal or illegal, and also what are we paying them? Because a lot of the times these folks are working for wages that are slave in essence. I do agree with Tony. Like, they're not earning a decent wage, and the money that they are sending back to folks that live in Mexico or Guatemala or any of the triangle countries is paltry in terms of what they should be making and what they should be earning in terms of a meaningful wage.
All right, we're running out of time here. So, Tony, if you have any final thoughts.
Just regarding the construction situation, so I'm not seeing the evidence that entire industries are dependent on it, but what we're currently investigating, a lot of construction companies hiring exclusively illegal immigrants are often producing very shoddy work, because if they're not following some regulations and restrictions, guess what? They're not following the others. So this is something we really does need to be addressed, because it's going to hurt the economy in other ways if certain individuals are allowed to stay or given blanket amnesty, which is why I'm glad Trump came out today and said no. At least I hope he stays with that.
All right. Thank you both again, Tony, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Good to see you guys.
Coming up, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass confronts ICE officers at a city park in an area known for criminal street gangs, many affiliated with the Mexican cartels. That story and more when we come back.
This land, our America, built on hard work, determination, and grit. Sometimes the days run long, but hope, it never runs out, even when the food does, for America's veterans, working parents, even kids. Because in every corner of every town, even yours, millions of hardworking neighbors are facing a hunger crisis, many for the very first time. In this land of plenty, affording food shouldn't require second jobs and third shifts or choosing between your groceries and bills. Today, you can help change that. Call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, less than 63 cents a day, to help every neighbor get the food they urgently need. Because taking care of each other is what makes America strong. We're Feeding America. Not just a name, but an action. Working with over 200 local food banks like the ones in your community. And demand is soaring.
You go to the grocery store, you spend $100, and $100 is a new $20 bill.
Even with 2 full-time jobs, it's hard to make ends meet.
These are tough times, but when we stand together, we become the very best of a strong America. Please call or go online to helpfeedingamerica.org. Just $19 a month can feed a family today. And your first gift can double an impact. Plus, we'll send you this free canvas bag as a reminder of the hope you're delivering.
When it comes down to it, it's about taking care of your family first and the loved ones that you need to provide for.
Because you're not just giving food, you're fueling resilience for people across the nation. You're feeding America. Call or go online today to helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they can do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way. No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-210-6422, 800-210-6422.
A day after President Trump sent over a dozen tariff letters to countries around the world, he stands strong in his trade negotiation strategy. At a cabinet meeting, Trump discusses trade deals and the Texas flooding. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent, Iris Tao. Good afternoon, Iris. What is the latest from the cabinet meeting this afternoon?
Good afternoon to you as well, Don. So President Trump this afternoon held his 6th cabinet meeting, and as usual, he opened it up to the press, talking to reporters, answering questions, along with his cabinet officials. And of course, among the top topics today, federal response to the devastating flood in Texas that has killed over 100 people. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem recounted her time while visiting the flood area. Also telling stories about, for example, parents trying to collect their kids' belongings in the Camp Mystic area where children went missing. Here's her talking about part of that heartbreaking experience. Watch.
One of the dads said, I knew 50 of these girls here. So I knew that was her dress and my daughter's friend's dress. So he was picking it up and putting it in a bag to return to her parents. And so it was and then the director was there comforting everybody who had lost his father the night before too, and he was still there trying to facilitate all of these parents grieving their children and find them. So the strength of people is incredible.
And of course, Secretary Noem also praised President Trump for his federal response by giving the funds needed to local governments as well as responders for them to activate their local recovery as well as rescue efforts. And also President Trump praised what he calls a unified response, saying it saved lives, and also says that he's visiting the area on Friday with the First Lady. Meanwhile, Attorney General Pam Bondi during the cabinet meeting was asked about the Epstein file. She was asked why basically her previous response saying that, for example, that she had it on her desk, and also what's really in the conclusion by the DOJ as well as the FBI, saying that there's no evidence of suicide. So Pam Bondi, while trying to respond to the question, President Trump interrupted the reporter, accusing the reporter of trying to waste everyone's time, given that there's a lot more important things going on in this country. Watch.
Talking about Jeffrey Epstein, this guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day.
And Attorney General Pam Bondi also explained why the prison video of Jeffrey Epstein had a minute of it missing. She says that according to the Bureau of Prisons, every night they redo that video. Is old from like 1999. Every night, she says, the video is reset and has a minute missing just like that. So that, she says, that's it on Jeffrey Epstein. Back to you.
And Iris, the president yesterday sent letters to a dozen countries informing them of new tariff rates. What's the president saying today about his strategy? Are we expecting more deals?
So the president now is calling these tariff letters that he's sending out unilaterally to these countries deals. He says it's basically my deals to these countries. He says in the next 24 hours, there will be a flurry of more such letters and what he calls deals going out to these countries. And he also says that it's time for these countries to stop ripping the U.S. off. And that's why he has to do this, to impose tariffs on them, as negotiating with, as he says, 200 countries will be too time-consuming as well as complicated. Watch.
You can make a lot more deals. It's just too time-consuming. It just makes it more complicated. It's about time the United States of America started collecting money from countries that were ripping us off and laughing behind our back at how stupid we were.
And yesterday, the White House press secretary told NTD that a president is taking issue with the BRICS nations' policies that he calls anti-American. And today, President Trump says that he'll be very soon hitting BRICS nations, which includes, for example, China, Russia, hitting them with a 10% tariffs, as Trump says they're trying to destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And President Trump says that's not going to happen. Back to you, Don.
Iris, thank you very much. President Trump is now detailing more of his administration's wind and solar policies. Trump signed an executive order to curtail federal tax credits for these projects. Trump promised Republicans he would sign it in exchange for their support for his massive domestic policy bill that was passed last week. The bill included a last-minute provision that allowed clean energy developers more latitude to claim federal tax credits. Trump's executive order can't override the statute, but it does direct the Treasury Department to vigorously enforce whether wind and solar companies are sourcing their components from China. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass confronted ICE officers yesterday at a city park. Some 100 ICE agents gathered just before 11 a.m. near MacArthur Park in the Westlake area, about 2 miles west of City Hall. The officers were in vans and some armored vehicles were on the outskirts of the park. The federal agents were wearing vests, and about a dozen Customs and Border Protection officers were riding horses into the park. They appeared to be staging for deportation activities. Protesters soon convened on the park. MacArthur Park is in an area that is home to long-standing criminal street gangs, many affiliated with the Mexican cartels. There have been gang shootings, rampant drug use, discarded syringes, homelessness, and people with mental health issues at the park. Bass was captured on video walking up to federal officers. She told journalists at the park that the federal law enforcement presence was unacceptable. Bass said they needed to leave, and they need to leave right now. The agents left apparently without making arrests. A civil trial began yesterday over President Trump's attempts to deport some pro-Palestinian activists. Academic groups sued, calling it an ideological deportation policy that violated free speech and due process. They compared it to McCarthy-era tactics and said it created a climate of fear on campuses. Government lawyers deny such a policy exists. The Justice Department argued the government has broad authority to remove non-citizens and a legitimate interest in combating anti-Semitism. The policy stems from 2 Trump executive orders early in his second term, one aimed at removing non-citizens seen as a terrorist threat, another cracking down on anti-Semitism. The bench trial is expected to conclude later this month. Coming up, Chinese purchases of U.S. farmland. The U.S. is working to ban Chinese and nationals of other adversaries from purchasing farmland in the United States, while officials say it puts our nation's food supply at risk. That and more after the break.
I was a quarterback at Hardaway High School. College first-round draft pick, on and off the field. We were taught to not show any signs of weakness. During the football season, I would stop eating, but I didn't know I was depressed. I thought that something was wrong with me. For 20 plus years was physical. We didn't have any education behind what mental health was. I started to learn it starts here first. If this is together, I'll be better as a father, as a man, and as a husband. Put the importance on your mental health. I'm not scared to talk about it anymore. The first tool is therapy. The second one is positive self-talk. And then journaling, putting your thoughts on paper. We have to redefine what being a strong man is and heal, love your mind.
My name's Stacy, I'm 57, and I was adopted in 2020.
We were adopted in 2019.
And we were adopted in 2021.
We had a house, and it sounds crazy, but it wasn't a home. The one thing that Jake and Emma brought is it became a home.
When I met Dakota, he had just turned 14.
You weren't there for the first this and the first that. I missed the first words, but we got a lot of other firsts.
Watching her say, oh my God, I cannot believe I got my license. And she's like, I passed. And I'm like, girl.
See them grow. It is.
They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
You and you. Kids in the middle. What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete. But it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Trump administration is working to ban Chinese nationals and other adversaries from buying U.S. farmland. They say it's a national security issue. For more on this, we're joined live by NTD's Washington correspondent, Jack Bradley. Jack, break this down for us. What are the dangers of Chinese nationals owning U.S. farmland?
Right, Don. So, well, the main concern here is that the Chinese Communist Party is directing companies in China to purchase farmland to control the U.S. domestic food supply. Once they have that, they could shut it down. So today, Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins announced what's called the National Farm Security Action Plan. This is a series of actions aimed to safeguard America's food supply, including restricting farmland purchases to foreign adversaries, mainly China. They're also working to reclaim farmland already acquired by China. Rollins was joined by several cabinet officials, nearly a dozen governors, in announcing the move. Let's take a look.
And the first of the 7 is securing and protecting American farmland ownership, actively engaging at every level of government to take swift legislative and executive action to ban the purchase of American farmland by Chinese nationals and other foreign adversaries. Standing on the shoulders of great governors, 3 of whom are standing behind me, who have already been leading the way on this issue. And at the federal government level, working to do everything within our ability, including presidential authorities, to claw back what has already been purchased by China and other foreign adversaries. Additionally, working with the Treasury of the Secretary of the Treasury, along with our Defense Department, on memorandums to ensure that moving forward, there is a much more intentional look at who is buying what in this country and from where they are in the world.
So Trump administration officials say that it's part of the CCP's unrestricted warfare to acquire this farmland, which means going to war with the U.S. while not using bullets, but other means of acquiring U.S. agricultural supply. Another risk here is that even if it's just regular Chinese companies and citizens looking to purchase land in the U.S., the problem is that they're subject to the Chinese Communist Party's national intelligence law issued in 2017. That law requires all of its citizens to turn over data to the CCP, so they'd eventually be subject to directives by the Chinese regime. As you can imagine, the amount of pressure that they would have to operate while in China. Other officials emphasize that Chinese-owned companies control critical agriculture assets such as Smithfield Foods and hold land near U.S. military bases, posing national security risks. Let's watch that.
Food security, just like energy resilience, just like where we get our water, that's all national security, especially in a contingency. So we would be asleep at the wheel if we were not fully a party to an effort like this to ensure that our nation had the food supply it needs. But specifically, our troops have what they need on our bases so that in those moments, you can rely on us here in the United States to provide that security.
Right now, foreign entities own about 1/5 of the protein processing. Between beef and pork, JBS and Smithfield own about 1/5, maybe 1/4 of the protein processing in this entire country. That's just wrong. I think beyond that, it's the intellectual property theft. It's the Chinese scientists that are in our own universities and research that are stealing intellectual property. It wasn't too long ago they were taking rice seeds from my alma mater.
We are indeed in a new world where kinetic warfare is not the first choice of our rivals anymore. Rather, it is things like sending us seeds or trying to steal our seeds or trying to change the seeds. It is acquiring our supply chain in agriculture. It's setting up spy shops on land next to military bases.
Now, news of this move comes just after a month ago when two people working at the University of Michigan were from China. They were Chinese nationals, were caught smuggling in, allegedly, a bioweapon into the U.S. to harm U.S. agriculture. Secretary Rollins announcing today that she'll also be a member of the Committee on Foreign Investment, otherwise known as CFIUS. This is an interagency committee, and it's responsible for tracking, investigating foreign nationals' real estate and business purchases. Don?
So, Jack, this has been an issue for a while. Last year, the Biden administration, by executive action, stopped a large purchase of Chinese land, Chinese purchase near a U.S. military base. What is the main concern here?
That's right. President Biden issued an executive order last year stopping a majority-owned Chinese company called Mine One from buying 12 acres of land next to Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. This base is home to nuclear-armed intercontinental ballistic missiles. So this was a rare move by the Biden administration. But right now, I want to pull up that graphic. Here we have, it was released today by the USDA. It shows Chinese farmland purchases near military bases. Those red blocks are actual military bases, and you can see on the chart the hundreds of thousands of acres owned by China and how close they are to these sensitive military sites. And by the way, that's just the Chinese-owned sites. This doesn't include other areas of concern, such as North Korea, Russia, Iran, and other adversaries in which they own U.S. land. Don?
All right, Jack, thank you very much. Earlier today, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu met with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Vice President J.D. Vance. The Israeli leader underscored the importance of bipartisan support for Israel. NTD's Washington correspondent Melina Weisskopf brings us more.
This is the first time the Israeli leader has met with Washington leaders since that Israel-Iran ceasefire was negotiated. The prime minister, talking to reporters, leaving the meeting with House Speaker Mike Johnson, though, honed in on the efforts to get hostages out of Gaza. He also spoke about his vision for the future in the Middle East, saying that there is an opportunity for peace, but that more work needs to be done.
Release all our hostages, eliminate and destroy Hamas's military and governance capabilities, because Gaza must have a different future for our sake, for everyone's sake. and no country will settle for less.
Prime Minister, are you concerned about polls showing that support for Israel in the United States is falling, especially among Democrats?
Well, I certainly am interested in maintaining the great support that Israel has had. I think there's been a concerted effort to spread vilifications and demonization against Israel in the social media. It's directed, it's funded, it is malignant, and we intend to fight it because nothing defeats lies like the truth, and we shall spread the truth.
The Prime Minister says there are 50 hostages still being held in Gaza. Israeli forces predict 20 of them are still alive. And this hostage deal is part of a broader ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas that's now being negotiated. The Prime Minister said that he's looking forward to that deal being solidified, though he fears the more he speaks about it publicly, the less likely he says it is to come to fruition. And on this point, he says he's very likely to meet with President Trump again to continue discussions around Gaza. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The U.S. is set to send more weapons to Ukraine. President Trump says he's not happy that Russian President Vladimir Putin hasn't stopped the war yet. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pasdar has the latest.
We're going to send some more weapons. We have to. They have to be able to defend themselves.
Amid a sharp increase in Russian attacks on Ukraine, President Trump says the U.S. will send Kiev more defensive weapons. After Trump's statements on Monday night, the Pentagon affirmed that, at the president's direction, it would resume weapons shipments to Ukraine to ensure the Ukrainians can defend themselves while we work to secure a lasting peace and ensure the killing stops. Just last week, Trump had a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russia later said it'll continue the war in Ukraine, while Trump described the phone call as disappointing. Now on Monday night, he said this.
It's a horrible thing, and I'm not happy with President Putin at all. I'm disappointed, frankly, that President Putin hasn't stopped. I'm not happy about it either.
The Kremlin commented on Tuesday, saying more time is needed to clarify what weapons the U.S. will send to Ukraine. But while commenting on European weapons aid, a Kremlin spokesperson claimed that such shipments hinder peace efforts. The Kremlin also commented on the apparent suicide of Russia's former transportation minister. Roman Staratov reportedly killed himself on Monday. The same day, the Kremlin dismissed him and replaced him with a new transportation minister. Now, Staratov's dismissal came just days after transportation chaos in Russia amid Ukrainian drone attacks. The Kremlin now said on Tuesday that the suicide was, quote, shocking. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
An imposter reportedly used artificial intelligence to impersonate Secretary of State Marco Rubio. According to a State Department cable, someone generated Rubio's voice to contact 3 foreign ministers and 2 U.S. politicians. In mid-June, the imposter reportedly contacted the ministers, a U.S. governor, and a member of Congress using the Signal messaging app. Voicemails were left in 2 instances and a text message in a third. The message invited the other party to communicate on Signal. That's according to a State Department cable seen by multiple outlets. The department sent the cable to all diplomatic and consular posts. It advised staff to warn partners about fake accounts and impersonations. According to the department, there's no direct cyber threat from this campaign, but shared information could be exposed if targeted individuals are compromised. Germany summons the Chinese ambassador after a Chinese warship uses a laser to interfere with the German aircraft involved in a Red Sea operation. The German Foreign Ministry said on X that putting German personnel at risk and disrupting the operation is completely unacceptable. Germany said the aircraft was taking part in a European Union operation to protect Red Sea routes. Houthi rebels in Yemen have been attacking vessels in the region. The German Foreign Ministry said the Chinese warship had been encountered several times in the area, and a laser targeted the German aircraft with no clear rationale or prior communication. As a result, the aircraft's mission was aborted and the crew landed safely in the African country of Djibouti. Pomp and ceremony as the French president makes a state visit to Britain. Macron and his counterpart Starmer are expected to discuss shared immigration challenges, defense, and the rebuilding of economic ties between the 2 nations. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson has more for us.
A cordial state visit. French President Emmanuel Macron meets British King Charles in Windsor Castle. State visits capitalize on the royals' soft power to strengthen diplomatic ties with allies. They are ceremonial welcomes full of pomp and pageantry, and it sets the stage for Macron's three-day visit to the UK. Addressing British Parliament, Macron said the two nations must work together to protect the international order forged since World War II.
The United Kingdom and France must once again show the world that our alliance can make all the difference.
Both he and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will lead a Franco-British summit later this week. Migration is expected near the top of the agenda. More than 21,000 illegal immigrants have crossed from France to Britain in boats so far this year. It's a key issue for UK voters. British ministers have been pushing for France to revise its rules to allow police to intervene when boats are in shallow water, rather than requiring the boats to still be on land. Last week, French authorities appeared to change tactics when officers used a knife to puncture an inflatable boat after it had launched.
We cannot allow our country's rules for taking in people to be flouted and criminal networks to cynically exploit the hopes of so many individuals with so little respect for human life.
Macron said the Franco-British summit will mark a new stage to scale up cooperation between the two countries, Europe's only two nuclear powers. The two countries shoulder 40% of the continent's military budget. Macron also said European countries should become more economically independent.
But we will have as well to de-risk our two countries for the excessive dependencies on both the US and China.
He said the US is a strong ally, while China is a challenge. He said European nations should cooperate with them, but not depend on them, and that European nations should work hard to strengthen their technology, economies and supply chains. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News.
Coming up, in Canada, the city of Calgary kicks off its iconic Stampede Parade with a spectacular parade downtown. Over 300,000 people line the streets as floats, marching bands, and horses bring Western spirit to life. That and more after the break.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without him.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits zero, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down. Call before that happens. Call 800-983-3523. 800-983-3523.
According to ancient Chinese medicine, purslane is considered a medicinal herb and is used to help lower cholesterol, improve vascular functions, and prevent diabetes. Perilla seeds can nourish the lungs and spleen. It is used to treat asthma and improve pulmonary functions. Puritang green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds from Hwangmae Mountain in South Korea. It contains over 90% of omega-3, 6, 7, and 9, the highest concentration possible without chemical additives. The soft gel is made of natural seaweed. It is 100% organic and vegan. Both adults and children can take it with peace of mind. Ancient recipes were passed down from heaven to bring prosperity and longevity. Puritang green vegetable omega-3.
The Calgary Stampede, billed as the greatest outdoor show on earth, is now underway in Alberta, Canada. The 10-day event celebrates Western heritage with rodeos, concerts, and Indigenous showcases. It runs from July 4th to the 13th and draws over 1 million visitors annually. On Saturday, festivities kicked off with the iconic Stampede Parade in downtown Calgary. Here's a closer look.
Country star Shania Twain kicked off this year's festivities as parade marshal at 9 a.m., leading 110 entries through downtown Calgary, including 35 vibrant floats, 9 marching bands, and over 700 horses. An estimated 300,000 spectators lined the streets to experience the excitement and tradition of the West.
Welcome everybody to Calgary and show them a little bit of our Western heritage. The cowboy way is rooted in a lot of integrity.
Stampede gathers so many people from all walks of life to celebrate and enjoy the hospitality of Calgary and the Calgary Stampede spirit.
The enthusiasm of the country is amazing. Everybody loves Calgary.
Since 1912, the Calgary Stampede Parade has been an annual celebration of Western heritage, uniting diverse communities and showcasing the city's creativity.
Stampede is a celebration of the multicultures that are in the city, all the people who've come here to make the city as vibrant as it is, and the people who started with the city, the big four, and bringing them forward. So
Just means independent spirit, entrepreneurial spirit, can-do attitude.
It's really amazing. I'm enjoying the Canadian pride, the Calgary pride. The horses are beautiful and the people are so friendly.
The Falun Dafa group stood out with a striking performance, led by the Tianguo Marching Band, followed by an elegant float and a rhythmic waist drum team. The group conveyed the core values of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, earning enthusiastic praise from the crowd.
Tremendous. It's wonderful to see that enforced. It has to be practiced every day and be mindful of it, and everybody would be better for it.
This is a great tradition to pass on to the kids. Those values are great. It's exactly the kind of community values we need.
Attendees said the values promoted by the group resonated deeply with the spirit of the Stampede. NTD News, Canada.
Coming up, TSA has a new policy that could speed up the passenger screening process. Stay with us after the break.
Big things are happening at Mathis Homes. Save all summer long with price drop alerts all over the store. Their suppliers have cut prices and they're passing those savings on to you. Get new lower prices with top name recliners as low as $199. And huge markdowns on hundreds of sofas in all the latest styles. Now's your chance to save big for every room in your house. There's something for everyone. Plus, get 12-month no-interest financing and free delivery. Check out these price drop alerts and save at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they can do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way. No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first